This time we're looking at how to make a perfect salad. First, a simple green salad for an English summer, then a white bean salad with tuna fish from Tuscany, and then finally a Thai beef salad with sesame seeds and grapes. Well, now before we actually get on to making any salads, we're going to start by making salad dressings and begin more specifically with the kind of ingredients you need to buy to make salad dressings. First of all, olive oil. Now when you go into a supermarket, you see a whole wall of olive oils and vinegars and you think, my goodness, where do I start? It must be very confusing if you're just beginning. So I want to try and help you narrow it down to the minimum amount you need, I think, to cook and make nice salad dressings. Well, first of all, there's extra virgin olive oil, and this is dark, sometimes green in colour. It's the first pressing from the olives and no heat is used. It's called cold pressed. Then there's the second pressing, which heat is used, and this is a cheaper olive oil and is sometimes blended with the first type. And this is what you need for sort of every day. I have what I call my best olive oil for best days and my everyday olive oil. This one here is ground nut oil, and that's very luscious and rich, but it doesn't have a lot of flavour of its own, so it would be a good oil to use if you're using a lot of flavourings in your dressing, like herbs or garlic. Now, if you're worried about using nut oil, a good alternative to that would be grapeseed oil. A little bit more expensive, but that's also good. This one here is called walnut oil, and that one is very good when you're using nuts in a salad and you want to get a sort of rich, nutty flavour. Buy it in small quantities though, because it doesn't have a long shelf life. Now this one next door is Oriental toasted sesame oil, and that has a really lovely, rich, luscious flavour, nutty flavour. So that's very good when you want to make Oriental salads. Now I would say you don't need anything else. You don't need flavoured oils, flavoured vinegars. All you need is that little group, I think, to start off with. Then we're going to move on to what I believe to be the most essential types of vinegars to have in your larder. Well, we're going to start with this one here, which is good old malt vinegar, which when I first started writing recipes really was all you could buy, and olive oil came from the chemist and was used for medicinal purposes. But now it's got to its rightful place, nowhere near a salad. Never use malt vinegar near a salad. Very good for fish and chips, very good for herrings or something with a strong flavour, but never near a salad. It's too strong. What you need for a salad are wine vinegars, and I would urge you to get the best quality you can, because some of the cheaper ones are very, very acidic, and you need lots more sort of olive oil to make them palatable. So a good quality red wine vinegar and a good quality white wine vinegar will make beautiful salad dressing. Then there's also this one here, which is cider vinegar. This is less expensive, very good for every day, but also better than those in some particular salad dressings. I think a good cider vinegar is a very, very essential ingredient. Then we've got two speciality vinegars. One is sherry vinegar, lovely and nutty and brown in flavour. And this one is balsamic vinegar. It's made by a very complicated process. It's aged in wooden casks of different types of wood and blended and aged. And some people, when they get a really good one, really like to drink it sort of on ice in a cocktail glass instead of putting it on a salad. But I like to use it on a salad dressing. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful ingredient. So there we are. I've counted just 9 bottles there, and that should be all you need to start off making really good salad dressings. So now let's make the salad dressing. First important piece of equipment for me is using one of these, which we've talked about before in the series, pestle and mortar. I mean, you can make salad dressings in blenders, but it seems a lot of bother for a small amount. This is much better. And there are no rules in salad dressings. Well, actually, there is one rule, and that is don't make it in advance. I think you should always make it fresh. It doesn't seem to taste so good if it's hung around for a long time. So I would always make the salad dressing just before I'm going to make the salad. But then there aren't any rules, because you get to know what you like, and you use the flavourings you like and the amounts you like. So I'm just now going to give you guidelines. First of all, garlic. Well, 1 clove of garlic or half a clove of garlic. I'm going to use 1 today. And then a teaspoonful of sea salt. And you can just put that in with the garlic and crush it the same as we did earlier on in the series, breaking it up and then just crushing the salt and the garlic until you have a lovely creamy, smooth puree. The next ingredient is mustard, and I always like to use English mustard powder in my salad dressings, and I just use a teaspoonful, which also emulsifies it a bit and gives it a little bit of thickness to the dressing. And my husband makes better salad dressings than me, and I often wondered why, and he says, well, you've got to really work the mustard in. At this stage, you've got to work hard and get the mustard in. But I think it's one of the hazards of being a cook, when you're cooking quite a lot. It's amazing how somebody else makes something. It always tastes better than it does when you make it yourself. But anyway, I'm going to do what he says, and I'm going to work the mustard in. Now, you can use grain mustard, or you can use Dijon mustard if you prefer it. But I like the English mustard the best. And that's all clinging now, so I'm just going to take that off. And the next ingredient I'm going to use is vinegar. But before I put the vinegar in, let me just tell you that sometimes it's quite nice to use either a lime or a lemon in salad dressings instead of vinegar, no vinegar at all, because especially I think if you're serving a salad with fish, for instance, it's very nice to have a lemony, a nice sharp lemony dressing. Now, my favourite at the moment, and it does change from time to time, but my favourite at the moment is a dessert spoonful of balsamic vinegar, and then that's followed by a dessert spoonful of sherry vinegar, and mixing these two together gives a very deep kind of flavour. So a dessert spoon of sherry vinegar next, and then I'm just going to work that in a little bit. And when we first got wine vinegar, they were quite sort of sharp and acidic, and I used to use 6 tablespoons of oil or 5, but now since the vinegar has become of such superb quality, what I now use is 4 tablespoons of olive oil, which I'm now going to get. And I've got my sort of best days olive oil here, the extra virgin cold pressing. But what you need to do is taste it, and the best way to taste it is to dip a salad leaf into the dressing. It's much better if you taste it on a leaf. And then just see how you like it. You might like more vinegar, you might like less oil. It's just really a very, very personal thing. Now I'm going to take the pestle out and just clean the bits off the end of it. The final ingredient to go into the vinaigrette is pepper. And I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You might want less and you might want more. And then just give that a good final whisk until everything's thoroughly blended. And then when you actually dress the salad, give it another whisk last minute before it goes in. That's one way of blending it. And you can see now it's looking quite thick and ready to coat some lovely salad leaves. But there is another way, and that is you can pour it into a screw-top jar like this and just give it a really, really good shake before it goes on to the salad. Well, that's the salad dressing, or one salad dressing. As I've told you, there are no rules. You can make up your own according to your own taste. But how do we make the salad? Well, now, before you can make the perfect salad, you've got to choose the perfect salad leaves, because just like the oils and vinegars we've been looking at, there's such a large range of salad leaves now, you can get completely bewildered and not know which ones you want. The first guideline I'd like to give you is, do you want to have designer looks, or do you want lots of texture and flavour? Well, I know which I want, and that's what I'm going to tell you about now. The latter, which has texture, flavour, and holds the dressing properly. These are very old-fashioned leaves that have been around for a long time, not designer, but very, very good. This one here is called frisée, or sometimes it's called curly endive, and it's the one the French use with crispy bacon and croutons and lots of garlic in the dressing. Very good one. This is one of my most favourites. This is coarse lettuce, and when you take a leaf off, you can kind of hear the crunch and feel it. What Cos lettuce does is it takes the dressing beautifully. The dressing doesn't make it sort of wilt and flop, it just holds it. Lots of flavour and lots of texture. This is also a good lettuce. This is very old-fashioned, the round English lettuce, but not to be despised because the heart of that lettuce also has lovely leaves, gentler than the Cos, but still taking the dressing and giving you texture and flavour as well. Then I've got some more leaves here that I think are very good. This one here is called lamb's lettuce, and this is curly and quite pretty too if you want looks. It's not a crisp leaf, but it does have nice texture and flavour and is very good. One of my top of the pops favourites is this one here. This is old-fashioned rocket that's been used in salads in this country since medieval times. A beautiful, buttery, green flavour, and again it takes all the dressing beautifully. And good old watercress, a good leaf in a salad. And when you're making a salad, it's better to have the large leaves than the tiny ones. Now you can buy mixed salad leaves in bags, but I've got to give you a word of warning here. If they're not the right leaves, if they're too designer, then what happens is, as soon as the dressing gets anywhere near them, they just wilt and collapse, and they're no good at all and go soggy. But there are some good mixtures. The thing you need to look for is when you buy a bag of lettuce, of mixed leaves like this, you need to look very carefully to see how dry they are. How good they are will mean if they look really dry. If they look wet at all, don't buy them, because if they're damp, they won't take the dressing. So I'd just like to show you this one. This is the lamb's lettuce, which has little shreds of beetroot. So if you want colour, you can get it and still get a good salad. The little shreds of raw beetroot make that one look very pretty. It's good for a garnish. And this one here is mixed leaves. And these bags of lettuce come from France, and I find the French seem to have cracked the way of getting leaves into bags dry so that they take the dressing easily. And that's just a mixed leaf salad with about 4 different kinds of leaves in it. Well, once you've chosen the leaves you're going to use for your salad, how to prepare them, how to look after them. Well, when you're using lettuce, don't separate the leaves. Don't think, oh, I'll get ahead and separate the leaves out in the afternoon if you're going to serve them in the evening. Always separate them as late as possible, because whilst they're still sort of clinging together, they're staying fresher. Then I'm afraid I'm going to have to say that I don't wash lettuce. The commercially available lettuces now are never very dirty. If they are, what I do is take a damp piece of kitchen paper and I simply wipe any little bits of dust off the leaves, because once they're wet, they're not going to take the dressing, and it's very hard to dry them. If you're forced to wash them, then an old-fashioned salad basket that you sort of swing around outside is quite good for drying them, and then you can use a tea cloth. But try not to wash them, and don't write to me and tell me, that I should wash my lettuces, because that's what happened to me before when I last said that on television. I had loads of lettuce. If you want to wash it, by all means, you wash it, but I think I'd rather have the dressing on it. So now, once you've got the leaves prepared, the next thing you do is put them into your bowl. And another tip here is never use a knife with a leaf, because that makes it wilt. So you break the leaves with your fingers. The rocket doesn't need breaking, that can go in whole. And these leaves here can go in whole. It's only the big ones, the very big ones, that need to be broken up. And again, don't break them up until the last minute, because as soon as they're broken, that can also cause them to go limp. So here we are. We've got a green salad ready for its dressing. Next thing I need to tell you, we've got the vinaigrette. I'm going to give that a good whisk, because all those lovely ingredients need to be very thoroughly combined a minute before you dress the salad. And I'm going to start off with just 1 tablespoon of the vinaigrette. That's going to go in. And then the next thing I have to tell you, that really the very best way to dress a salad is with your hands, because you can very quickly and swiftly just turn the leaves over to get the dressing onto them. In France, in the 18th century, they always asked the lady at the table with the prettiest hands to dress the salad. Didn't matter how ugly she was, if she had pretty hands, she was the one who was chosen. And what you're aiming for here is leaves that are beautifully glistening with dressing, but not too much. Too much dressing makes them soggy. And you might just, I think I'm just going to use a tiny bit more. So I'm going to whisk it again. Just use a tiny bit more here, about half a tablespoon this time, just to finish off. And have a final mix. And then the test of a good salad is this. You can take the salad like that, and there's no dressing in the bottom of the bowl. If you've got little pools of dressing, you've got too much in there. So that's what you're aiming for, just each leaf individually coated, and a lovely, crunchy green salad with a beautifully flavoured vinaigrette is one of the special things in life. This is a truly beautiful combination of textures and flavours. Marinated roasted aubergines and tomatoes with feta cheese. First of all, take some plum tomatoes, skinned and halved, and roast them in the oven on a baking sheet, cut side up, for about 50 to 60 minutes until they're blackened around the edges. Meanwhile, char grill 2 medium aubergines, which have been sliced, salted and drained. Then place the aubergines in a bowl and pour over a marinade of olive oil, balsamic vinegar and basil leaves. Toss them around and leave them in a cool place until you're ready to serve on a bed of mixed salad leaves with the cooled tomatoes. Then add 7 ounces of feta cheese sliced in small strips, and finally finish off with some half-fat creme fraiche on each portion with a little bit of paprika sprinkled over. Well, a green salad is usually a side salad, but now I want to show you a salad that you can serve as a main course for 6 or 8 people with lots of crusty bread and some nice chilled white wine. And this is called American chef salad. It's served all over America, and why it's called chef salad is because really you can put any ingredients you like in it. You can make up your own recipes. But the principles of it are that if you have something left over like cooked chicken or ham, you can make it into a chef salad, a conglomerate as it were. Well, first of all I'm going to show you the dressing, which is quite different from the vinaigrette dressing. We start off in this jug here with 1/4 pint of soured cream. That's there, and now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise. Now this could be the homemade, the quick homemade mayonnaise we used earlier in the series making tartare sauce, or the mayonnaise I'm using today is a good quality bought mayonnaise. Then I've got a tablespoon of lemon juice. I'm just going to put all the ingredients in and then mix them later. I've got a crushed clove of garlic, but you can use more. If you want more, you can use two cloves of garlic. Then I'm going to use a teaspoonful, quite a heaped teaspoonful of grain mustard, and a tablespoon of good quality white wine vinegar. And then to follow that, 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And then all that's going to need now is a really good seasoning of freshly milled pepper and salt. So we'll put that in next. And you can do a bit of tasting after you've mixed it and see if it needs any more seasoning. And the same little whisk we used for the vinaigrette. And just now go in and give that a really good whisking. Couldn't be simpler, but it makes a lovely creamy dressing that's quite different from vinaigrette dressing. So we'll just put that on one side. Now, one of the ingredients in the salad today is going to be avocado, and I thought it might be a good opportunity to just explain how to prepare it. First of all, when you're buying it, you shouldn't really go in with your thumb and press it because it'll bruise it. What you should do is pick the avocado up and just hold it in the palm of your hand, and if the whole thing gives under pressure, then you know it's ripe and ready. Slice it in half, take the sharp knife all the way round. The stone is in the middle, and you can feel the stone, so go all the way round with the stone. Then if you give it a twist like that, it comes in half. Then you take out the stone, and then just slice it first of all into quarters, and then the quarters again, and then we're going to slice it up to put it in the salad, and the peel just peels off like that. Now if you're making a sauce with avocado, there's a lot of lovely green colour there, so you can scrape that off with a teaspoon. And I'm still one of those old-fashioned people that I actually just love eating that with vinaigrette dressing. I still like it. It's not fashionable now, you don't find it in restaurants, but it is extremely good. And what we've got for our salad today are, we'll start with avocado, 2 avocados that have been prepared like that and chopped into little bite-sized chunks or slices like that. So that's going to go in to the salad bowl, and the leaves I'm using are cos lettuce, round lettuce, watercress and rocket. Then I'm going to add this, which is 4 ounces of very thinly sliced raw mushrooms, and this, which is 6 ounces of streaky bacon. It's been grilled until it's really, really crisp and crunchy. And here I've got garlic sausage. Now, this is garlic sausage. You buy it in a piece like that, not sliced thinly, but in a piece. And then you cut it into little strips like this. So I've got 8 ounces of garlic sausage there. And then I'm going to put some cheese in, and this is beautiful, wonderful roquefort cheese, and I've got 3 ounces, and I've just crumbled it with my fingers. It's not chopped, it's just crumpled into quite small pieces. Now I'm just going to give that a good shake, and the dressing's going to need another quick whisk. And then the way to dress it is to put, say, half the dressing on first, go in and mix, and then put the other half on later, because it's very important that everything is beautifully coated with this lovely creamy dressing. So that's our first go. And sometimes I use my hands, but I start off with a kitchen spoon. You know, salad servers are never big enough, so a good kitchen spoon and fork. And then just go in and start to mix. Just folding everything over, getting all those lovely little bits distributed amongst the leaves. You can see now it's beginning to get completely coated. And now we'll go in with the second lot. There we go, the final lot of dressing. And I'm going to get my rubber spatula here just to get the very last bits of dressing out, because it's so delicious. We don't want to lose any at all. And so just carry on. I think it needs about sort of 2 or 3 minutes, this mixing. And then take it to the table, and just before you do take it to the table, it has one final garnishing ingredient, and that is 4 spring onions, finely chopped, and they just make it look quite pretty as well. So don't forget, you can use any other kind of ingredient you want to, but that is American Chef salad. This is a recipe for summer, a salad with broad beans. You need about 4 pounds of broad beans. This is pancetta, and like the bacon in the chef's salad, you need to cook it under a hot grill till crisp and crunchy, and then when it's cool, crumple it into small pieces. Now, simmer the beans in boiling water for about 5 minutes, drain them and place them in a serving bowl. While they're still warm, pour over a vinaigrette dressing made with sherry vinegar. Now add 2 finely chopped shallots, the pancetta pieces, and a tablespoon of mixed chopped herbs. Give all this a good mix and coat with the dressing, then cover with the cloth and leave it for a couple of hours for the beans to soak up all the lovely flavours. Well, I've got time to show you just one more salad, and this one is very good for a first course for 6 people, or for a light lunch, maybe for 3 or 4. It's called white bean and tuna fish salad, and it's got a lemon pepper dressing. But first of all, I want to talk about the white beans. When you buy a tin of baked beans, they are haricot beans, and they're small and squat shaped. But these are rather special. These are Tuscan beans, and they are rather sort of elongated in shape, and they're called cannellini beans, and they have masses of flavour, very widely used in Tuscan cooking, where this recipe comes from. And what you do with the cannellini beans is you soak them overnight, then you drain off the water, put some more water in the pot, and boil them for about 1¼ hours until they're tender. And you can see here They're tender, but they still hold their shape. It's important not to overcook them. And let me explain the dressing while I'm going to put it on, and tell you also that you always put the dressing on while the beans are still warm, while they're freshly cooked and still a bit warm, because then the dressing penetrates. And I've given it a good whisk there, and as it goes in, I'll tell you what's in it. It's called lemon pepper dressing, and it has the grated zest of a lemon, a teaspoon of peppercorns, a heaped teaspoon, and the peppercorns have been crushed with a pestle and mortar, not from a pepper mill, so you can see they've got sort of nice crunchy bits of pepper. And then we've got 3 tablespoons of oil, olive oil, Tuscan olive oil, 3 tablespoons of the oil drained from 2 tins of tuna fish, and 3 tablespoons of lemon. Just give that a good mix. There's quite a lot of dressing. You'll think that's quite a big amount, but the beans do tend to sort of soak it up. And then I'm going to add the contents of 2 tins of tuna fish, which has been drained, and we use the oil in the dressing. I'm going to give it another mix, and then in the salad bowl I'm going to put, first of all, a layer of rocket leaves. Now I've got an ounce of rocket leaves here, and I'm going to put 3/4 of them in the base of the bowl, and then I'm going to put the beans on top. You can see all that dressing has been soaked right up into the beans. Spread that out a bit, and then the next ingredient, which adds a bit of crunch and a lot of flavour, is this, which is 2 ounces of red onion, and the red onion has been thinly sliced and then separated into little rings like this. And then finally, I'm going to put the rest of the rocket on top, and just so that we can see what's in the salad, just press the rocket leaves down a little bit so that they sort of get tucked into the salad. And that will be very, very nice with something Italian to drink and lots of crusty bread. That is Tuscan bean and tuna fish salad. Well, I've just got time to show you this spiced carnaroli rice salad. The rice is cooked with ground spices, with crunchy pine nuts and dried fruit. It has sort of Moroccan overtones. It's served with grilled red onions and is brilliant for a buffet or a lunch to go with cold cuts. This is a very special salad from Thailand. Slices of rare rump steak are combined with a spicy dressing, served with grapes and garnished with coriander, mint and toasted sesame seeds. It has a truly oriental flavour. So, happy salad making, and next time we're going to have a close look at what's new in the dairy. Bye-bye. This time, with the help of some special ingredients, we're going to be cooking fish, making desserts and doing some home baking. Well, hello, and this week's programme has got a kind of a subtitle to it, which is What's New in the Dairy? Because over the long years that I've been cooking, I've seen a complete revolution take place in the dairy. Because when I first started, you had milk, sour cream if you were lucky, and double cream and single cream. Now, when you go to the dairy counter in a supermarket or the shelves, it just goes on for miles and miles, and you've got hundreds of different ingredients, hundreds of different yogurts. So I thought it might be nice in this programme to have a look at what's new. And I suppose the first ingredient that I would say has revolutionised my own cooking, I often get teased about it, is this one here, which is creme fraiche. That is quite simply the most beautiful dairy ingredient to come into our kitchens since I've been cooking. It comes from Normandy. The best creme fraiche comes from the Normandy area. And you can always see when it comes from Normandy by the sort of slightly greenish yellowy colour of the cream. With pasteurising, the heat treatment that you give cream, it loses some of its flavour. So the French decided they would get some of that flavour back after pasteurisation by adding a little bit of culture. And the results are this lovely thick dairy product which has less fat than double cream. It doesn't have all the fears attached to it with cooking of curdling. You can cook it and boil it, and that's all right. And also, its best virtue is that you can keep it in the refrigerator. It has a longer shelf life than double cream. The other wonderful thing about creme fraiche is you can buy it half fat, so you can have it full fat if you want it creamy and you're not watching your waistline or your diet, or you can have it half fat. Then there's another lovely ingredient, which is this one here, which has virtually no fat in it at all. So that's very good if you're on a diet. This one's called quark, and it's a skimmed milk soft cheese, and we used it, those of you who were with me on part one, by making Slimmer's scrambled eggs. But it's also nice spread on biscuits, served as something, where you want a spread but you don't want to have the fat, and it's got a nice sort of tang to it. This one over here is another important ingredient. This is Fromage frais. Now this one is fermented skimmed milk, and you can buy it virtually fat-free. So again, if you're trying to cut down on fat, that's a good one. But for the kitchen, I prefer this one here, which has got 8% fat. It actually has 8% cream added back into it. It's still low fat compared with creme fraiche or cream, but it's got lovely dairy flavour. And one more thing. If you're on a diet, as I often am, what's good about this one, Fromage frais, you can spread it on your toast and you kind of think you've got butter because you have got some dairy flavour there. Well, having talked about the virtues of low-fat products, I now want to point you to the most wicked one of all. And this one is a full-fat cream cheese. It's called Mascarpone, and it has all the flavour of sort of clover meadows. It's really a beautiful dairy ingredient, but it does have a lot of fat. So if you're not on a diet and you're very thin, then that would be lovely to just spoon onto fruit or other things. If you are watching your weight or you have got to eat a low-fat diet, then one of the nice things about mascarpone is it combines very well with fromage frais. So you could have half mascarpone, half fromage frais, and you get the flavour of the full-fat cheese, but without all the full fat. So that's 4 new products that are in the dairy. I'm going to talk about others later on, but first of all I want to show you a recipe using my star creme fraiche. And the recipe is one of the most delicious supper dishes for 2 people you're ever going to come across, and it's also extremely quick. And the main ingredient is this, which is smoked haddock. But these are called golden fillets because they're small haddocks that have been skinned and filleted. And I'm going to put 2 of these in the frying pan. They weigh about 7 ounces each. And in the frying pan following that, I'm going to put some freshly milled pepper, but no salt because there is some salt in the curing. And here I've got 1/4 pint of milk. And the milk is going to go in with the fish, and then it's all going to come up to simmering point. And once it comes up to simmering point, what's going to happen is the fish is going to poach in the milk. Now, you can make this with thick pieces of smoked haddock if you want to. in which case they would take about 12 minutes to poach. But with these tiny little golden fillets, it's only going to take about 8 minutes or so. Now the fish has just about had 8 minutes, so I'm going to take it out, and you can see how it sort of turns paler and looks more opaque when it's cooked. So what you do is remove the pieces of fish to a plate to sit on the side for a moment whilst you make the sauce. And what I'm going to do now is turn my heat right up to high, and with the milk that's left in the pan that's got all that lovely smoked haddock flavour in it, I'm going to combine this, which is 2 tablespoons of full fat creme fraiche. This is going to be a special recipe, this one. You can use half fat if you want to, but I think we're going to go the whole hog today. And so just let the creme fraiche melt, and then bring the whole lot to simmering point and let it simmer for about 2 minutes, and it'll reduce and become thick. And then the next ingredient I've got here is just half an ounce of butter, not too much, just half an ounce, but the flavour of cream and butter and smoked fish is just too good to miss. And I'm going to just let the butter melt into the sauce, and then when it's done that, I'm going to return the fish to the pan, and one more ingredient goes in. We'll return the fish like that into the lovely creamy sauce. One more ingredient, and that's a tablespoon of fresh snipped chives, and they just go all the way over the fish like that. And then the nicest way to serve that is on a plate of well-drained, lightly cooked spinach. And you've got the quickest meal. It takes 15 minutes from start to finish for 2 people, and the nicest meal you could possibly have. Creme fraiche combined with pepper makes a lovely sauce for entrecôte steak. But you begin this recipe with some supermarket beef stock, which you melt down in the pan and reduce it until it's half its original volume. Then clean the pan and add some butter and oil, and when they're really, really hot, add the steaks. Brown the steaks well on both sides, then add 2 tablespoons of cognac and let it splutter and reduce a bit in the pan before adding the reduced stock. Then add 2 heaped tablespoons of creme fraiche, and finally 2 teaspoons of coarsely crushed black peppercorns. Now let this all bubble and amalgamate for about 1 minute, and then serve the steaks on warm plates with the sauce spooned over. Now, modern cooks are so lucky in the kitchen because I want to introduce you to another really brilliant ingredient for cooking, and that is none other than Greek yogurt. When you're buying Greek yogurt, get the real thing. Don't get Greek-style yogurt. The real thing is much, much better. It's creamy, it's luscious, and it's thick. This one here has got the whole milk content in it, but again, if you're watching your fat, you can actually get Greek yogurt with 0% fat. The fat's been taken off, and I just want you to see the texture of that, because that is also quite thick and creamy too, and it's wonderful for people who are watching the fat content of their diet. Now, what I'm going to show you with Greek yogurt today is it's a wonderful ingredient for making an old-fashioned English rhubarb fool with a lighter touch. And you start off with rhubarb. I've got 1 1/4 pounds of rhubarb here. And I want to show you how to cook rhubarb properly. First of all, you wash the stalks and trim them, and then you cut them into good chunks like this, not too small. It's very important that the chunks are quite big. And if you cook the rhubarb in the oven with no liquid in it whatsoever, then you will find that the rhubarb will stay whole. It will stay in little chunks. It won't smash to pieces. And what we're going to do is add sugar to it. And I've got 3 ounces of sugar here. If you're making it sort of really early, when you have the first forced rhubarb, then you could get away with 2.5 ounces. But later on in the summer, it gets a bit sharper, so I would say you need 3 ounces. and you just put the sugar in with the rhubarb, and then it has the most incredible affinity with two things. One is orange and one is ginger. And I'm going to flavour it with ginger today. And you remember we used ginger earlier on in the series, fresh root ginger. Well, this can be peeled into little bulbs like this and then preserved in syrup. And it comes in jars like this, and you can keep it in your store cupboard. And this is what I'm going to use today, both fresh and preserved ginger. And the fresh ginger is a teaspoonful, which has been peeled and chopped, and that's going to go in amongst the rhubarb. And then the preserved ginger is going to be used a little later on. Now that goes into a medium oven, 350 degrees, and it'll take 40 minutes to cook. No liquid needed, don't forget. All the juice in the rhubarb will just come out, and I've got it here next to me. This is what it looks like. So if you just want to serve plain rhubarb compote, just cook it like that, and you'll see that it retains its shape. Now for our fool, what you need to do with this is drain off the juice, and then you put it into a food processor and whip it up to a puree, in which case it will look like this, and you add 2 tablespoons of the juice while you're whizzing it up to get a puree that's kind of that consistency and a lovely colour. Then, what I've got in my bowl here is 200 grams of Greek yoghurt, and I'm now going to add half the rhubarb to the yoghurt and just fold that in, and immediately you get this lovely sort of marbled look. But we don't want the marbled look. We're going to go on and on, folding until the yoghurt and the rhubarb are perfectly combined. And what's good about making rhubarb fool with Greek yoghurt instead of double cream is because the yoghurt has a bit of sharpness, it makes the whole thing taste really, really fresh and really, really summery. Now once you've combined the yoghurt and the rhubarb puree, you then need to put it into serving dishes. And I've got some little glasses here. This amount, the recipe I've given you, will serve 4. And these are called Manhattan cocktail glasses, and they're very good for serving desserts like this. What you do is put the fool in the bottom and then the rest of the puree on the top, so that when you eat it, you're sort of putting your spoon into the rhubarb puree and then getting the fool from underneath. And then the little pieces of stem ginger have been cut into little shreds, and I'm just going to put a few little shreds on top like that as a garnish. And then that will go into the refrigerator, each one covered with cling film. And I think that's very nice if it's served well chilled. Now I'd like to show you a couple of other very fast Greek yoghurt desserts. We've got, first of all, full-fat Greek yoghurt sprinkled with frozen pistachio nuts and drizzled with Greek honey. And next to that I've got toffee fudge bananas. Chopped bananas in Greek yoghurt sprinkled with dark molasses sugar, which turns into pools of toffee sauce overnight. And then we've topped them with toasted nuts. This is a lovely low-fat dessert made with fromage frais. You need some gelatin to start off with, either powdered or leaves, but I prefer to use the leaves, which you soak in water for about 5 minutes. Meanwhile, mix 3 ounces of golden caster sugar with 5 fluid ounces of semi-skimmed milk, and heat until the sugar is dissolved. Now squeeze the gelatin to remove the excess water and add it to the milk, then whisk very thoroughly and leave it to cool. Now add either vanilla extract or the seeds from a vanilla pod to 800 grams of fromage frais. Then add the milk mixture and mix really well. Divide the mixture between individual pudding basins, cover with cling film and chill. When they're chilled, ease them away from the sides with your little finger and then turn them onto plates and serve them with either red fruit compote made with plums, cherries, strawberries and raspberries, or any kind of fruit compote. Well, one of the greatest classic dairy desserts of all times must surely be creme caramel. and we're going to start making our creme caramel today with how to make a caramel. And there are lots of little tips and rules that belong to the making of caramel. First of all, you need a really good little saucepan. And this, just like you need a good omelette pan to make a good omelette, you need a good saucepan to make sauces. This is one that is really, really good. It's made from heavy gauge aluminium, quite a humble little saucepan, but really, really does the job. Then you need 6 ounces of caster sugar, and you turn your heat to medium. Now I've got the heat already turned at medium, so the saucepan is quite warm. And I'm going to put the 6 ounces of caster sugar in. And what we want to happen now is for the sugar crystals to dissolve. And this is going to take quite a time. In fact, to make a caramel altogether takes about 10 minutes. And you need to have a bit of patience here, because I think where people go wrong is they don't want to wait 10 minutes, turn the heat up too high, and then it all gets burnt and sticky and nasty. And then after approximately 5 minutes, what you'll find is the sugar begins to melt, and then you can start to stir. What you need to end up with is a caramel that looks a dark amber colour, or say 1 shade darker than runny honey. And that's why you need to have a pale saucepan. If you make it in a black saucepan, it's very hard to see the colour. And one other thing I didn't mention before is when you're making caramel, it is important. This is the only occasion when I would use white caster sugar and not golden, because if you start off with golden, you know, it's quite difficult to judge it. So that's just about ready now. What we need to do to finish the caramel is turn the heat out, and then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of warm water. Now when you add the warm water, there's usually a bit of a splutter, so you need to stand well back and perhaps hold the jug with a cloth. So we'll put that in now. It is a bit of a frightening thing to see, actually, because it does sort of bubble and go sticky and toffee-like, but that is exactly how it should be. Just give it a good whisk. And then when all the bubbles subside, take it over to the caramel dish. And the dish I'm using is in fact a soufflé dish, and put 2/3 of the caramel into the soufflé dish, and then the rest stays in the saucepan, and we'll just get rid of that. And then what you do is you take the dish and you pour the caramel round the edge so that it's coating the base of the dish and the edge of the dish. And that's going to be the topping when we turn the creme caramel out. Now we go back to the saucepan and turn the heat on again, this time on to low. And I'm going to add the first ingredients for making the caramel custard, and that is 1/2 pint of single cream and 1/4 pint of full cream milk. And that goes onto the caramel that's left in the saucepan. And then I'm going to take my whisk and whisk it over quite a gentle heat, so all the caramel that's left there will actually get melted and mixed into the custard, and that means you shouldn't have much left on your saucepan. Now what can happen when you're trying to reincorporate the caramel is it can go hard and sort of cling to your whisk like this, and it can cling to the base of the saucepan as well. But not to worry, because the heat will eventually melt it, so not to worry. And then I sometimes get letters from people saying, how do you clean caramel off the base of a saucepan? Well, the way to do that is to actually put the saucepan back on the heat with some hot water and bring it up to the boil, and it'll melt. You won't have any problem. If you put it in cold water, you'll be in trouble. Now the next bit of the recipe is we're going to take the caramel mixture over to a jug here that's containing 4 beaten eggs. So that's going to go to join the eggs now. And we have got a little bit of caramel stuck on the saucepan there, so that'll come off easily later. Give that a little whisk now, and add 1 more ingredient, which is a teaspoonful of vanilla extract. Another good whisk. Now that's going to go into the dish containing the caramel, but we're going to just strain it through a sieve, just in case there are any little clumps of caramel left. I don't think there are, but it's just a wise precaution. And I didn't tell you the size of the soufflé dish, which is in fact 1.5 pints. Now we're going to put that into a roasting tin, and I'm going to just fill the roasting tin with some water. about an inch of water. And the water should be just off the boil. And that goes into a preheated oven, quite a low heated oven, gas mark 2 or the equivalent, and it's going to take an hour and a quarter to just very, very gently cook. And this is our finished creme caramel. When it comes out of the oven, you need to just test whether it's cooked by just putting your little finger in the centre here. It's like cooking a quiche. If it sort of feels set, then it's all right. After an hour and a quarter, then remove it from the oven. As soon as it's absolutely cold, cover it with cling film and then chill it in the refrigerator. And I think it's nicer if it's made the day before and left to really chill overnight. Then turn it out just before serving. And to do that, you take a small palette knife and slide it around, all the way around the edge. And what I haven't told you so far is how many this is going to serve, and I think it serves 4 to 6 people. So make sure it's nice and loose at the edges. Just push it in with your fingers as well, a bit. Then put a plate on top, like that, and turn it upside down. Bit of manoeuvring here. Then you need to give it a good hefty shake. And you can hear it come out. And there we go. The caramel's beginning to seep out of the edge here. And there it is. And all that lovely caramel we put in the bottom there has all come around on the top and turned into this beautiful sauce. If you prefer coffee to toffee, you might like to make this dessert, which begins by soaking powdered gelatin in water. Then the gelatin is added to a custard of egg yolks and whole milk, stabilised with corn flour. And to the hot custard, you add 6 heaped teaspoons of espresso coffee powder. When that's completely dissolved, pour the mixture into a mixing bowl, and when it's cool, whisk in 7 fluid ounces of creme fraiche. Then in another bowl, whisk up the whites of the eggs to the soft peak stage. Then gently fold them into the mixture. Then pour it into glass cups or moulds and set it aside for 2 hours. Then chill thoroughly before serving, and when you serve it, pour in a coffee syrup made with sugar and espresso powder, and top with softly whipped double cream. Well, now we're going to look at 2 more wonderful dairy ingredients. The first one is buttermilk and the second one is clotted cream. And if you've got some buttermilk and some clotted cream, there's only one thing in the world you can make, and that is buttermilk scones, and serve them with the clotted cream. Well, buttermilk is now quite widely available and it's excellent. We used it in part 1 for making those lovely pancakes, but it's very good for baking, for making scones and cakes and all sorts of things. So today I'm going to show you buttermilk scones, and I started off with 8 ounces of self-raising flour and 3 ounces of butter. Now, one thing I have to tell you, don't make the mistake I have made, I'm ashamed to say, a couple of times in my life, and that is, look at the bag of flour. It must be self-raising, because if you're in a hurry and you make a mistake and you use plain flour, you won't have very good scones, and I've done it myself, so I'm warning you. So it's self-raising flour, 8 ounces and 3 ounces of butter. And that's been rubbed together until it gets to the crumbly stage, like this, and the flour was sifted. And now I'm going to add 1.5 ounces of golden caster sugar, the unrefined caster sugar. I'm just going to mix that into the rest. And then in my jug I've got 2 tablespoons of buttermilk, and that's been beaten with 1 large egg, and that's going to go in. I made a little well in the centre there. Start off mixing with a palette knife, and then when you can't mix any more with a knife, then you go in with your hands. And you might find you need a spot more buttermilk, but we'll see how we go now. And if it feels too dry, which I think this is probably going to, but you've got to have a little bit of patience and just work it round, because it does sometimes go right in. No, I do think we're going to have a spot more. So I've got a spot more here in my jug. I'll just add maybe like a teaspoonful, something like that. And then the secret of making scones, good scones, providing you've got the self-raising flour, is to roll them out properly. It's the rolling out that actually determines how good your scones are. So work it round until all the crummy bits, like when we made pastry, are incorporated, and then you get rid of the bowl and you flour your work surface lightly, and then just shape the dough into a round. Take a rolling pin, give that a little bit of a flouring as well, and then lightly, very lightly, one hand on each end of the rolling pin, roll it out, and what you want is a dough that's 1 inch thick. And that is the secret of scone making. So the thing to do is to get a tape measure and just measure 1 inch. Then you take a cutter, this is 2 inches in diameter, put it lightly on the dough and then give it a sharp tap. And you've got your first scone, which will come out quite easily like that. And you go on around until you've used all that, and then you re-roll the trimmings and you start again. I'll do one more. Don't twist the cutter because otherwise you'll get a funny shape. Just lightly on top, out it comes, and you can see it's 1 inch high. Then brush them with a little bit of milk, and then just sprinkle them with more flour and pop them into a very hot oven preheated to 425 degrees, and they'll take 12 minutes to cook. Well, here we are. These have cooled a little bit, but I think it's quite nice to eat them just slightly warm. In any case, you don't want to eat them the next day. They need to be eaten nice and fresh, but I don't think you'll have any problems. But what I want to do is split the scone in half and just show you how lovely and light and feathery that is in the middle. And then what we're going to do now is just give it, first of all, some wonderful clotted cream, which was just invented to go on scones. It's so beautiful. And then this is another recipe that I've prepared. This one is called raspberry butter, and it's a raspberry puree that's been sieved and then cooked with sugar until it becomes thick like this, and it's like a beautiful sort of fresh tasting preserve. So there we are, clotted cream scones with raspberry butter. This is one of the great classic English desserts. Eton mess is what it's called, and it's the strawberry and cream dessert traditionally served at Eton College. It's brilliant for nervous meringue makers because never mind the cracks, you're going to break them up and serve them with the strawberries and double cream and a puree. These are pecan shortbreads, and they're filled with a mixture of ready-made custard mixed with creme fraiche. After that, add some fresh raspberries and some raspberry coulis, then top with another shortbread, a few more raspberries, and dust with icing sugar. Well, that's just a glimpse into the enormous subject of dairy foods, but I'll be coming back, and next time I'm going to share with you some recipes with fruits. This time we have a traditional apple crumble, a curry from Thailand, and my own version of the famous classic American key lime pie. Hello and welcome to a programme which today is all about fruits, and we're going to kick off by me showing you the best fruit salad I've ever made. But before I do that, we're going to prepare some fruits. I want to show you how to prepare fruits, but I thought this would be a good opportunity in how to cook to just have a little word before we start cutting up fruits about knives. And really, over the years I've been cooking, I've sort of confined myself down to having only 6 knives in my kitchen now that seem to serve every purpose that I need. First one is this one here, which is a palette knife, but it's got a serrated edge, so you can use it as a palette knife, but you can also use it to cut bread. It's actually very, very good for carving as well, and because it's a palette knife, it's very good for spreading. This is very important. This is a vegetable parer, and we spoke about that when we did the vegetable programme. This is quite a good little knife too. This is a curved paring knife, which I seem to use that quite a lot. That's very good also for getting into awkward corners of things. This used to be called a tomato knife, but it isn't now, but it does slice tomatoes very, very well. It's got a serrated edge, and I use it for many, many other uses. This is a kitchen knife that's used for everything under the sun, for chopping, for cutting, also for filleting fish. I don't believe in having a special knife, I just use that for everything. And then this is also a general little kitchen knife. This one's got a serrated edge. But what about getting sharpness? Well, let's have a look at how to sharpen knives. This is a rather nice modern sharpening steel. You hold it in a horizontal position, so it's facing you like this in a horizontal position. Then you take your knife, and I learnt to do this from a friend of mine who's a butcher. He taught me how to do this, and the way he explained it years and years ago was you always start with the heel of the knife, so that's this bit here, and you just go down one side and then down the other side, but always starting at the heel of the knife, and then you get more and more quick. And he said to me the best way to sharpen knives, we'll just do this small one as well, the best way to sharpen knives is little and often. So you don't spend a long time, you just use your knife, then a little bit more and a little bit more. So there we are. I hope you found that helpful. And now I'm going to show you the recipe, which is for a tropical fruit salad in planter's punch. And if you visit the Caribbean, which I have several times, they make a drink called planter's punch. And what I've done is more or less made the same mixture, but used it as a syrup to make the fruit salad. But preparing fruit. First one I thought I'd show you, this is in the recipe, this is fresh pineapple, is how to deal with the pineapple, because it can be quite forbidding. It's sort of not a very friendly looking thing, is it? But when you're choosing a pineapple, you need to remember that the colour doesn't indicate the ripeness, because sometimes it can be fully ripe, but it's still quite green. Some pineapples are green, some are amber in colour. One of the indications you can look for is these little points here. If they're brown and shriveled, that's a good example, like that. Also, if you turn the pineapple upside down and you press it with your thumbs here, if it gives and it feels quite soft, that's another indication. Then there's one more indication. The leaves at the top here, if you take a leaf and you give a sharp tug and it comes away easily, like that, that's an indication. And finally, the final thing you need to do is have a little sniff, because if it's ripe, you'll definitely get that lovely sort of pineapple aroma. So then what do we do with it? First of all, take the leaf end off, like that, with your sharpened knife. Then take the other end off, like that. Then stand it up on its end and go down as close as you can to the flesh. And when you've gone all the way round, you'll find that you've got these little brown marks here. Let's get rid of the debris. And what you do with these is you just take the point of a vegetable parer or potato peeler and you just pull it out like that. You go round it like that and pull those out. Then you cut it into quarters, lengthways, and you end up with quarters looking like this. And all you need to then do is just cut
the core out. This core part in the middle here isn't really edible, so that comes away. And then it's all ready to cut into nice chunks. And that's how we want it for the fruit salad. Let's run through the other fruits. First of all, mango. I'm not going to show you how to prepare a mango now. We're going to do that later on in the programme. Next one is passion fruit. And if you're puzzled about what to do with passion fruit, the first thing to do is to look for a really wrinkled skin. There's one here that's not so wrinkled. It's quite smooth, so that wouldn't really be ready. But this one's nice and wrinkled. So the way to prepare that is simply cut it in half, and then you'll see all the juice and the seeds inside, and all you do with those is you take a teaspoon and just slide those lovely seeds and juice out, and you eat the seeds and the juice, and they have a wonderful fragrance and flavour. This one's kiwi fruit, and all that needs is peeling and slicing. These are lychees, served in Chinese restaurants a lot, used in Chinese cooking. And all you do with these is you just take the skin off and peel it. It comes off quite easily. And when the skin is off, you slice it in half, going all the way around like that. And inside, you're going to find a big sort of brown pit. And the brown pit needs to come out so that you're left with two halves of the flesh. And that is juicy and delicious and lovely. Now we've got this one. This is called pawpaw or papaya. The way to tell if this is ready is give it a squeeze like an avocado, and if it gives you some give. But also it should be yellow. It should be turning yellow like this one here. If it's all green, it's not going to be ready. And this is a wonderful fruit because as soon as you open it out, it has the most incredibly wonderful colour, sort of deep peachy apricot. All you do with that is just take the seeds out, then peel off the skin with a knife, just peel it, and chop it into chunks for your fruit salad. Finally, not an exotic fruit, one that we're all very familiar with every day, and that's an orange. But I just thought I might show you how to segment an orange and get rid of all the pith. First of all, the peel comes off more or less the same way as we did with the pineapple. And then that reveals the segments all the way round. And the way to get a neat segment with no pith is to just take your knife in where you see that line showing you the pith. Put your knife in and then go down the other side where the next bit of pith is, and then just pull your segment out. Take out the middle bit like that, and that's all ready then for your fruit salad. And the fruit in the fruit salad is 2 bananas, 8 ounces of black grapes halved, a pawpaw, a large mango, a small pineapple, 4 passion fruit, 2 oranges, 8 ounces of lychees, and 2 kiwi fruit. And what you do is chop it up into nice big chunky chunks. I think one of the things that spoils a fruit salad is that I often see people chopping the fruit too small. I think you've got to have really nice chunky bits like this. And now for the best bit, the planter's punch. In my jug here I've got 10 fluid ounces of water, and this has been made into a syrup with 4 ounces of sugar, and I've got the zest of 2 limes thinly pared off with the potato peeler. And that's just been put on a very low heat until the sugar's dissolved, and you can see I've got 2 cinnamon sticks in there too, so it's just got a vague, faint flavour of cinnamon. So the syrup goes onto the fruit, like that, straining out the peel, and then I've got 4 fluid ounces of pineapple juice, I've got 4 fluid ounces of freshly squeezed orange juice, and I've got 5 fluid ounces of dark rum, very Caribbean that one, and the zest of the 2 limes went in here and the juice is in here, so the juice of the 2 limes. Now you need to just give that a really, really good mix to distribute all the flavours. And if you have planter's punch in the Caribbean, what they do, just give it some juice, is they just finish it off with a little bit of finely grated nutmeg. That is tropical fruit salad in planter's punch.
This is a recipe for an old-fashioned trifle made with rhubarb. The rhubarb is baked in the oven with the juice and zest of an orange and 4 ounces of golden caster sugar. You begin by halving trifle sponges and spreading both halves with some marmalade. Then put them back together again and cut each one into 3 little sandwiches. Put them in a bowl and prick them with a skewer before sprinkling over 4 fluid ounces of Madeira. When the rhubarb is cooked and cooled, put the chunks into a bowl and mix any of the remaining juices in a jug with orange juice and a dissolved sachet of gelatin. This will make a jelly which is added to the trifle, and while it chills and sets in the fridge, whisk together some ready-made custard with Greek yoghurt and then spoon this over the set jelly. Now chill again until you're ready to serve, then just before serving, sprinkle the surface with toasted pecan nuts.
Well, as promised, I'm now going to show you how to prepare a mango. And the reason I'm going to show you that is because I want to show you a Thai fish curry with mango. I love Thailand, I love Thai recipes, and it's amazing how many of them incorporate the lovely fruits that they have there. Now, how do we deal with a mango? Well, first of all, when you buy a mango, you need to sort of pick it up, like we did with the avocado, hold it in your hands, and if it's got give under it, it's ripe. The colour has nothing to do with ripeness. It can be green and ripe, and it can be red and not ripe. So you just need to give it that little bit of pressure. Also, a ripe mango has a nice sort of perfume. You can smell the wonderful perfume. It's an excellent fruit, one of the best of all. And when you get it home and you want to prepare it, it's quite tricky if you don't know how. So I'm going to show you how. It's got a big, long stone in the middle. So you take a sharp knife, slide the knife in and take it one side of the stone on that side and then one side of the stone on that side. And then you can see the lovely, beautiful colour of the flesh. It's an absolutely gorgeous colour. Then you take a small knife and you make incisions across like that, and as if you were doing noughts and crosses, you go back again like that, and then you turn it sort of inside out like that, and what you'll see is you've got little cubes of mango. Then you take your sharp knife again and just put the cubes of mango into your bowl, ready for whatever you're going to do. And I'll just show you what to do with the other bit, and that is take the skin off like that and then go all the way around with the knife. And then you just need to chop the flesh away from the stone. It's not going to be this time, it's not going to be in nice little cubes. It's going to be however you can get it, however you can get hold of it. So you just, I've hit the stone there. So what I'm going to do is just keep on going and get all the little bits of mango away from the stone, so that what I end up with in the end is just a stone and all the flesh off it. And sometimes, if there are little bits clinging to the stone, you can just pick the stone up and eat them off. I often do that. Right, so that's how to prepare a mango. Now we're going to do the first part of the curry. And what I've got over here is a large cooking pot, could be a wok, and that's going to go onto a high heat, which has already been preheated. And then into that I'm going to put 2 tins of coconut milk, good store cupboard ingredient this one. 2 tins of coconut milk into the hot casserole, and first of all you've got to bring it up to the boil, still over a high heat. We'll give it a stir, and then you turn the heat down and let it simmer for about 20 minutes until it's reduced to half its original quantity. And what will happen is, as it reduces down, it will begin to split and go oily and look a bit curdly, but that's absolutely normal, so you don't have to worry. Well, now we're going to make the Thai curry paste. But first of all, one of the important ingredients is lemongrass. And in case you haven't used lemongrass before, I just want to tell you how to prepare it. And the thing to do is to think spring onions. It's just the same as spring onions. You take the outer layer away, which is tougher. Take the root off, and then take the end away, which is most of the green bit. And then just chop the lemongrass into pieces. For this recipe, it's all going to go into the processor, so you don't have to worry about how you chop it. Right, so we'll put the lemongrass in here first, into the food processor. 2 stalks of lemongrass prepared like that. Then we've got 4 cloves of garlic. They go in. This is fresh root ginger. I've got about 1-inch piece, and that's been peeled and cut into slices. And then I've got 1 small onion that's been quartered. Goes in next. And here I've got chilies. Now, I'm using 2 of these fat, mild chilies that we spoke about earlier on in the series because I want some chili flavour, but I don't want it very hot. But somebody who's working here with me this week said that they like it hot. So if you want it really hot, use these little chilies here. These are called bird's eye chilies. They're the authentic Thai chilies. They're much hotter, and you'd need about 8 of those to get a really hot curry. So you can choose, but I'm using 2, and they've just been de-seeded and cut in half. Then we've got the zest of a lime, and the juice of the same lime. That goes in next. And then this lovely ingredient that we spoke about in the first programme, in the store cupboard programme, Thai fish sauce. And here we need 3 tablespoons. 1, 2, 3. And then finally, another Thai ingredient. This is shrimp paste, and we're going to use a teaspoonful of shrimp paste, which is going to give us the most incredible flavour. And now I'm just going to put the lid on and whisk that up into a puree. Now, I have to say, it doesn't look very promising at this stage, but wait till you taste all those flavours. They're wonderful. Now, the fish we're using is here, and this is 2 pounds of fresh haddock here, but you could use cod, or you could use halibut, or you could abandon white fish altogether and just use some big, fat, juicy tiger prawns, whichever you prefer. Right, and then the coconut milk is now reduced. Now let me just tell you, because I think this is quite important, that all of this can be prepared in advance. The fish, the mango, the curry paste, and even the sauce can all be prepared in advance. And then just before you want to eat the curry, it's going to take about 5 or 6 minutes to cook. And what you do is, we're going to turn the heat back up a little bit now in there. And I'm going to first of all add the fish. And then I'm going to add the curry paste. Give that a good stir. Give that all a really, really good stir to amalgamate it. And then as soon as it comes back to simmering point, then you just give it 4 minutes cooking. So the fish has just had 4 minutes cooking now. I'm going to add my prepared mango, and that's going to have another 2 minutes. And then finally, just before you serve the curry, sprinkle it with 3 tablespoons of chopped coriander leaves, and that gives it a lovely colour. And I think this is nice served with Thai fragrant rice, and it'll be enough for 4 quite hungry people. This is a very unusual recipe for figs, which are roasted, topped with gorgonzola cheese, and then there's a sauce made with honey and red wine vinegar. Simply halve 12 figs and place them on a baking sheet. Season with salt and pepper and grill for 5 to 6 minutes until they're soft and toasted. Now take 6 ounces of gorgonzola picante, cut into cubes, and put the cubes onto the figs. Pop them back under the grill until the cheese is melted and bubbling and faintly golden brown. For the sauce, combine 2 tablespoons each of runny honey and red wine vinegar before pouring it over the figs. Well, now I'd like to show you one of the easiest and fastest fruit recipes in the world. It's called oat slices, and today I'm going to make them with plums and cinnamon. And I just want to give you a little tip first, because I've got a pound of plums here that have been stoned and sliced. So how to deal with a plum if you want to stone and slice it is you take a sharp knife, and where you see the natural line in the plum, you just slit it open like that. And then if you give it a twist, it will come completely in half. And then you can just ease the rest of the stone out with your fingers. And then cut it in slices. A pound of plums cut in slices, and to that I'm going to add a rounded teaspoon of cinnamon powder. Seems quite a lot, but it actually is very, very good, and just mix it into the plums. And then in my mixing bowl here I'm going to put in 10 ounces of organic whole wheat flour, and then 5 ounces of porridge oats, and these are also organic porridge oats. And then I'm just going to mix those together and add a teaspoon of salt. Seems quite a lot of salt, a teaspoonful, but it does make a difference, so in goes the salt. And now I'm going to mix that with a mixture I've got prepared in my saucepan here. And this is 8 ounces of melted butter, and the butter has been melted with 4 ounces of light soft brown sugar. So I'll just give that a stir because it's separated out a bit whilst it's been waiting for me. Pour that into the centre. And then I'm going to start mixing with my spoon just to get that all mixed together. And then I shall finish off in the end with my hands. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a hands-on person. I really always think that hands are really better and quicker in the end. So we'll just get that finally mixed. Now, the nice thing about this recipe is that you can make it with any fruit at all. Today I've got plums, but it's wonderful with apricots, peaches. It's very nice with prunes. It's also very, very good. I've done it in another recipe collection with mincemeat. So if you've got any mincemeat left over from Christmas, that also makes a nice filling. Now, take half that mixture and put it into a baking tin. And this baking tin actually measures 10 inches by 6 inches by 1 inch. But for once, I'm going to tell you that it's not vital. You could have a tin not any smaller, but certainly you could have one that's just slightly bigger. Then just press it with your hands. So you can see how easy this is. It's absolutely stunningly delicious, but at the same time it's terribly, terribly easy. And anyone can make it, aged 8 to 88. Then the plums will go on top of the first layer, like that. And we'll just spread those out a little bit. And press them down a bit. And then the next lot goes on top. And I probably forgot to mention that it also works incredibly well with apples. And in which case I would use a little bit of cloves in with the cinnamon. So now that gets spread on top. And then really now all you do is just make sure it's spread out quite evenly. But you don't have to be too particular about this. It's lovely. It's just doesn't matter really how it goes. But you've got to be very firm. Just press it down very, very firmly. And then the oven you preheat to gas mark 6, and that's going to take 25 minutes. And I've got one here that has been baked, and you leave it to cool for about 10 minutes. And then take a knife, and what I've done is I've just made some cuts to make it easier to break them up later on. 2 vertical cuts lengthways and then 4 cuts widthways, which will give you 15 altogether. But don't take them out now because it might be a bit crumbly. You need to leave it to get quite cold before you take them out. Anyway, that's one of my favourite recipes. That is plum and cinnamon oat slices. In Britain we have the finest apples in the world, so no fruit programme would be complete without an apple recipe. My apple and almond crumble uses both Bramleys and Coxes, although you can use other fruits as well. Add cinnamon and ground cloves and soft brown sugar to sliced apples. Then mix very thoroughly before putting them into a baking dish. To make the crumble topping, add 3 ounces of chilled butter to 6 ounces of self-raising flour and 4 of demerara sugar with 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, then whiz them all in a processor till it resembles fine crumbs. Then add 4 ounces of unblanched almonds and process again, not too fast, until everything looks crumbly and the almonds are coarsely chopped. Now sprinkle the crumble mixture over the apples, press it down very firmly all over, then finish off by just running a fork over the surface. Bake in a hot oven for about 35 to 40 minutes, then leave it to rest for 10 to 15 minutes before serving either with pouring cream or a real homemade custard. This is my version of an American classic called key lime pie. It's made with limes, condensed milk and egg yolks, and it's set on a crisp crust of digestive biscuits and grape nuts, served with creme fraiche and a twist of lime. This is a Christmassy recipe made with navel oranges, which are spiced and cooked with port. It makes a lovely accompaniment to cold cuts, particularly ham. Well, sadly my time's up again, but I shall be back next time with some information on and recipes for cheese. See you then. This is glorious cheese with a Welsh rabbit, Mexican enchiladas, and a Greek cheesecake made with yoghurt, honey and pistachios.
Well, how to cook with and how to eat cheese is my subject for today, and cheese probably is one of the greatest gifts of all in food, and something that we should have a real reverence for. Well, let me just pass on a little bit of my personal philosophy on cheese, and that is I think there are two kinds of cheese. One lot is for cooking, and the rest is for just sitting down and eating. Now, for cooking cheese, I think you need a good, strong cheddar that you keep in your fridge, and it's available all the time just for grating and making omelettes or having cheese on toast. I think you need a good Parmigiano Reggiano in a piece that you can grate yourself every time you need it. That's also good for cooking. And I also think a good melting cheese is very important for cooking. One of the good melting cheeses is Gruyere or an Italian Fontina. But when it comes to eating cheese, the most wonderful thing about that is you don't actually have to cook at all. You can have a beautiful meal without any cooking. In fact, the French have a wonderful phrase they use about eating cheese, and they call cheese, wine and bread the trinity of the table, and I think that's absolutely right. It's lovely. Now, in France, it's very easy to buy good cheese, of course, because there are little cheese shops everywhere, and all the cheese always seems to be ripe and ready to eat, but they eat much more than we do, and we don't have that so often here. But I would urge you to actually find yourself a good cheese supplier. Taste the cheeses before you buy them, find out what they're like. And the really good news is that in this country there's been a real revolution in cheese making. Not only in this country but also in Ireland, and we now have brilliant cheesemakers. But the other good news is that you can actually buy some of these cheeses direct from the suppliers by mail, and they will come in a box like this overnight, be delivered for about £5. Now, you won't have a big box like this. We're doing a television programme. They do come in smaller boxes, and the nicest thing is you can actually store the cheese in the box until you need to use it. But let's just talk a little bit now about storing cheese and how's the best way to store it. I think that's what most people want to know. Well, if you buy cheese from a supplier like this, what they do is they wrap the cheese in paper which has got wax on one side of it, and that's very good, and you can actually buy that paper yourself, special wax paper. Now, if you can't get wax paper, you can use this here, and this is just ordinary parchment paper, the kind that you use for baking or lining cake tins. And then what you do is, as they've done here, just fold the cheese up in the paper and then just use a bit of sticky tape to seal it down, or you can I've even used elastic bands just to seal it down. So that's the best kind of paper. Cling film isn't good, and foil isn't so good either. So that's the way you store your cheese. Now, in the refrigerator or out of the refrigerator? Well, this is a personal taste, really. Best, the cheese experts say, out of the refrigerator. I would say go by the weather. If it's a very warm day, then I think you're probably better off in paper like this in the lowest part of the refrigerator. Put it in the box that the refrigerator has for cheese, but don't close the lid. Leave a little bit of air going in. It needs a bit of air. If it's not a hot day, two places I can recommend storing cheese. One is in the garage. That's a good place. And if you haven't got a garage, you live in a flat, then another good place, if the weather isn't too hot, is to store your cheese in the boot of a car. I've often done that, and that works very, very well. Well, now we're going to look at how to make a perfect cheeseboard to finish a meal off with some nice red wine. But first of all, I've forgotten to mention one thing that people are often asking me, and what happens when you get a mould on the cheese? Well, it's perfectly all right, just slice off the mould and the cheese underneath will be all right. But when you want to really enjoy eating cheese, it's best not to keep it too long. If you can, eat it as soon as possible. Now, the perfect cheeseboard, I think, would consist of one blue cheese, and the one I want to show you here now is an Irish cheese called Cashel Blue. And then I'd have one medium soft cheese. When I've written my notes for you on cheeses, I've put them into groups of hard, soft, medium soft and so forth. So one medium soft cheese. This one is called Durras, that's also an Irish cheese. This one here is a goat's cheese. I think it's good to have one goat's cheese. This is called Fromage, it's an English fresh goat's cheese. And this one here
is one of the supreme cheeses in the world. This is cheddar cheese, but it's unpasteurised, beautifully made cheddar called Montgomery cheddar, and that's a real star. Now, perhaps we ought to say something about pasteurisation. Well, cheese, like wine, comes from various areas, and it's a kind of earthiness of the minerals in the air and in the place the cheese is made that comes into the flavour. And what happens is when you heat treat milk, when you pasteurize it, it knocks out some of that extra added flavour. And so I would say that treat yourself sometimes to an unpasteurised cheese. Obviously, it's not a good idea if you're pregnant or to serve it to vulnerable groups like very young children or the elderly. But it is a treat for cheese lovers, and I would recommend it. Finally, I would have a soft cheese. This is also an unpasteurised cheese. This is a real proper French Normandy camembert, and one of the greatest cheeses in the world as well. And what you need to do with a camembert is serve it when it's really got lots of nice squidge in it. So I'm going to cut a piece out, and we're going to hope it's got a lot of nice squidge in it. And good camembert shouldn't be sort of running. It should be just lovely and soft and creamy and squidgy. And when you buy camembert, it's got a date stamp on it, say that's in sort of 2 weeks' time, then just put it in the boot of the car and leave it for 2 weeks. Nobody can smell it if it's safely in the boot of the car. So that's a really good cheese board. Now we're going to move on and look at making some recipes with cheese. Well, when it comes to cooking with cheese, surely in this country the premier cheese dish must be toasted cheese or cheese on toast, whichever you like to call it. And there is a knack to making this, and the one I want to show you today involves 4 slices of quite well toasted white bread. I think white bread is crisper, and this needs to be from a large, good quality sandwich loaf. And what you do is you preheat the grill, always preheat the grill for about 10 minutes before you toast anything. Toast the bread, and then, as we looked at in part 1, you put the bread on a toasting rack so that it can become really nice and crunchy and crisp. Then you put it onto a baking sheet, leaving the grill on, and it's a good idea to line the baking sheet with foil because then it's easier to clean when the bits of cheese bubble over. So that's the toast, that's all ready to have the cheese now. And in my bowl here, I'm going to start off with a beaten egg, which gives it a sort of puffiness, a lightness and a puffiness. And then one traditional ingredient for making toasted cheese in this country is this, which is ale, brown ale. And I'm going to use 4 tablespoons of brown ale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I've got some flavouring ingredients here. First of all, a rounded teaspoon of mustard powder. And then I've got a rounded dessert spoon of grated onion. So that's going to go in. And then I'm going to use sage. 1 dessert spoon of freshly chopped sage leaves. Sage and onion have a lovely affinity with cheese. Just to give it a bit of a kick, I'm going to use some Worcestershire sauce, and again, a teaspoon of this will go in. Then I'm just going to give that little lot a whisk, and then add the cheese. And the cheese, in this case, is strong, matured, if possible, unpasteurised cheddar cheese. Now, what this dish is traditionally called is Welsh rabbit, or Welsh rarebit. It started off as Welsh rabbit, and I like the story of that. The reason it was called Welsh rabbit is because when the hunter came back and he had no luck, he hadn't found any rabbits, all he could have for his supper was toasted cheese. So I've called this Welsh rabbit with sage and onions. And now I'm going to just put that onto the toast, divide it equally. And then one little tip I'd like to give you here, when all the cheese is on, bearing in mind that you're going to have a lot more time than I've got now, and that is, you need to spread it with a knife, and you need to spread it right up to the end of the toast. So,
final ingredient is going to be a little pinch of cayenne pepper, which will give it a lovely bit of piquancy. So that's going to go under the grill now, and it's going to take about 5 minutes to bubble and cook and turn brown. And then what happens is it gets lovely and toasted on the top and browned and bubbling. And if you've got any little escaped bits, then you can just nick them up off the foil. And, well, sometimes I just pick them up and eat them because they're really good. Now, I'm just going to show you one quick alternative version to cheese on toast. And this here is crumpets. And what I've done is toasted the crumpets. And I'm going to give them a different topping. Crumpets are wonderful with cheese because the cheese just melts down through into the little holes. And this is gorgonzola cheese, and I've got 1.5 ounces of gorgonzola cheese that's been cut into cubes like this. And then I'm going to put some mozzarella cheese, 1/2 ounce of mozzarella. That's going to go on top of the gorgonzola. And then after that, some walnuts, which go really well with blue cheese. I've got 1/2 ounce of walnuts here. And what you have to do with the walnuts is you just have to poke them in amongst the cheese and try and get it all together like that. And then the final thing you do is you add 3 sage leaves that have been just dipped in olive oil. So they're going to go under the grill now, preheated grill again. And what happens to the sage leaves is they become really sort of crisp and crunchy. And that makes a lovely little snackette.
Cauliflower melds beautifully with the taste of roquefort cheese, and together they make a sublime soup that only takes about 40 minutes to make. First you make a stock by adding bay leaves to boiling water. Then use the leaves and stalks from the cauliflower. Simmer this for 20 minutes. Meanwhile, sweat onion, celery, leek and potato in another pan. Add the cauliflower florets, and to these add the strained stock together with the bay leaves. After 20 to 25 minutes simmering, remove the bay leaves and liquidize the soup until it's smooth. Then add chives and stir in crumpled roquefort cheese and half-fat creme fraiche. Keep stirring until the cheese has melted and the soup is very hot but not boiling.
Well, now we're actually going to come back to toasting cheese, but this time it's toasted goat's cheese. But before we deal with the goat's cheese, what it's going to be for is a salad with blackened sherry vinegar onions. And I want to show you first of all how to deal with the onions, and we'll get to the goat's cheese in a second. Well, the onions have a dressing, and the first ingredient that's going to go into my bowl here is 1 ounce of molasses sugar, which has a lovely flavour, and 3 fluid ounces of sherry vinegar. And what I'm going to do is just give those a quick whisk, because molasses sugar sometimes gets very sticky, and it's quite a good idea if you actually mix the vinegar with the sugar 10 minutes before you start, because then it has chance to dissolve. So what we're going to do now is just leave that aside while I explain the onions. And you need for this, the recipe is going to serve 4, and you need 3 Spanish onions, which is about 1 pound. You cut them in half, then into quarters, then into eighths, but you leave the root on, because what happens when you leave the root on is the layers stay together in little chunks like that, and that's what we want for the recipe. Then into the dressing I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and then give that another whisk, and then the dressing is actually going to go onto the onions, or rather the onions are going to join the dressing, and we're going to toss them around in it. So we'll do that. Just use a spoon, and you can see quite clearly when the onions have all had a good coating
with the dressing. It's important that you spend a little bit of time just tossing them over and over. And if there are any small little lumps of sugar left, it's nothing to worry about. Now what we're going to do is put the onions onto a nice large solid baking sheet, and any free dressing just gets spread around them like this. Spread them out and give them a good seasoning of salt and freshly milled black pepper. And what we're going to do is cook them in a very, very hot oven, highest temperature 450 degrees, and they're going to go on a high shelf, and they're going to take 30 minutes to cook all together, but you need to take them out at half time and just turn them over. And here they are, they're cooled now and ready to put into the salad, and I have to say that all that can be done well in advance, and you can just cover the onions with cling film and leave them at room temperature. I wouldn't put them in the fridge until you're actually ready to serve the salad. But now we're going to grill the goat's cheese. You can use any kind of goat's cheese you like, whatever's your favourite. I've got two different kinds here. One is a soft, mild goat's cheese, which is made in England, and this one is a French one. This is called crottin, and this has got a strong goaty flavour. So if you want to have a stronger flavour, I would recommend that one. A milder flavour, this one. If you're serving this one, you'll need 1 whole cheese per person, but this one you'll just need half. It's about roughly 4 ounces, and we're serving sort of 2 ounces per person. So what you do is you just cut the goat's cheese totally in half like that, and then you put it onto an oiled baking sheet. It's important that you have an oiled baking sheet. And then what I do is just put a little bit of freshly milled pepper onto the goat's cheese before it goes under the grill. And we've got the grill preheated as normal, and it's nice and hot, and we're going to put the cheese about 3 inches from the heat source, and it's going to take about 5 to 7 minutes to soften and become nice and golden on the top. So here's the toasted goat's cheese. Now all we need to do is prepare the salad, and the leaves I'm using here are a round curly lettuce with a little bit of rocket as well, the two mixed together. And what I'm going to do is just put the onions on the lettuce leaves on top like that, and then each person has some toasted goat's cheese in the centre of the salad like that. And then the dressing I'm using is the same dressing we made in the salad programme, the same vinaigrette dressing, which is sherry vinegar and balsamic vinegar. And then just before it goes to the table, just sprinkle some salad dressing all the way around like that. And any salad dressing you've got left over can go onto the table if anyone would like a bit extra. So there we are, that's toasted goat's cheese salad with blackened sherry vinegar onions.
Whether you're a vegetarian or not, this is a great supper dish. They're called cheese and herb fritters, and you can use any cheese as long as you have 12 ounces for 4 people or 6 ounces for 2 people. I'm using a mature cheddar, Gruyere and feta cheese, which you mix into a batter of plain flour and eggs. You then add chopped mixed herbs. I've got basil, thyme, oregano and parsley, but it's up to you. Cover the mixture and allow the flavours to develop for about an hour. Then flour your hands and mould a tablespoonful of the mixture into a round and dust it with flour. Heat oil in a frying pan until it's shimmering hot, then fry the fritters 1/2 at a time, turning them halfway before draining on crumpled greaseproof paper. I like to serve these with this, which is a sweet pepper marmalade, and perhaps a rocket or watercress salad. Well, I've now got yet another brilliant cheese recipe to show you. This one is called Mexican enchiladas with cheese. Now, when you make enchiladas, the first ingredient you need is a packet of these, and these are called flour tortillas. They're very widely available. They have a long shelf life, so it's a very good standby ingredient to have, and you can make any kind of variation on the recipe I'm going to show you with lots of different fillings. Well, what do they look like? They look like this. And I'm going to actually be using 4 in the recipe. Very difficult to make, I believe, by hand, but these are all made for us. And the recipe's using 4. It makes a first course or a snack for 4 people, or a main course for 2 quite hungry people. Now, before we deal with the tortillas, we're going to make another Mexican ingredient that's going to go as part of the filling, and that's called a salsa. And when I actually did part 1 of how to cook, we had a little cookery school on the Radio Times, and one of the pupils said to me, "Delia, do you think you could show me when you next do a television series how to chop an onion, because I don't know." And I've never done that, so here goes. This is specially for her. Now, the salsa involves a medium red onion. Now, what you do is you take the papery skin off the onion, and then you take the stalk end off with your knife, but you leave the root end intact, because this is going to make it easier for you. Then you first of all chop the onion in half, and you leave the root bit there, angle your fingers inward so you don't slice your fingers off, and then you start going into slices like this. Now, if you want slices, that's all you do, you just slice them like that. But if you want the onion to be finely chopped, then you turn it round this way, and then you just start going in the opposite direction, holding your fingers in and going like that until you get right down to the end. And then you've got finely chopped onion, and that's how it's done. So we'll just get rid of the debris. And now over here, somebody's very finely chopped an onion already for me, and I can show you the salsa. First ingredient in the salsa is a large 400-gram tin of Italian tomatoes. And you empty these into a sieve and put them over a bowl, and in about 10 minutes all the juice will collect in the bottom, and we just need the drained tomatoes. So they're going to go into my bowl first. And I have tried the recipe with fresh tomatoes, but I found the actual tin tomatoes work better. Then the onion, and I'm only going to put half the onion in because the rest is going to be used later on. Then I've got 2 tablespoons of chopped coriander leaves. They're going to go in. This is a fresh chilli that's been deseeded and chopped, as we saw earlier in the series. So that's the chilli. It's a green chilli. And then all these ingredients are very Mexican, this one too, the juice of a fresh lime. Now all we're going to do is just mix that, and the whole thing begins to look very colourful and very Mexican at this stage. Now we're going to deal with the tortillas, and because they've been sort of sitting in the pack in the larder for a while, what you need to do is refresh them. So you use a hot frying pan, and you just put the tortilla into the frying pan and count 6 seconds, 6 seconds only, and then when you've counted 6 seconds, you just turn it over onto the other side, and what that will do is just bring it to life again. It's like sort of putting bread in the oven to warm it through. It just refreshes it. And what about the cheese? Well, the stars of this recipe are 4 ounces of Wensleydale and 5 of mozzarella. Wensleydale is quite a mild cheese, but it's the closest thing to the kind of cheese you would have in Mexico. And so what I'm going to do is just combine those together. And we're going to use the salsa and the cheese and 1 more ingredient to make a filling for the tortilla. So, first of all, you use a tablespoon of salsa into each one. That's followed by a heaped tablespoon of cheese. The 2 cheeses mixed together. That's more like a heaped tablespoon. And then the other ingredient we're going to use is this, which is creme fraiche. And this is a small tub of creme fraiche. And I'm going to put a tablespoon of that in next. So you can begin to get the gist of how nice this is going to taste. Then what you do is you roll it up very carefully, like that, and you place the tortilla in a baking dish with the seam side, the bit I've rolled up here, down on the underside, just to keep it firm.
Now, to save time, I've got them all prepared here, ready to go into the oven. And I'll just explain the next bit of the recipe. Once the tortillas have been put into a baking dish, the next thing you do is you put the rest of the creme fraiche that's left on top of them, and that is followed by the salsa, and then the cheese, and then the rest of the onion on top. And then that goes into a preheated oven, gas mark 4, 350 degrees, and they're going to take about 25 to 30 minutes to cook. Now, one thing I didn't tell you, and that is, if you leave little bits of tortilla sticking out without any filling on the top, they go nice and crisp and crunchy in the oven, which is very, very good. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to serve it, because what you need to do is be very careful that you separate them with a knife. And if you've got a nice big palette knife like this, you should be able to get it all out in one fell swoop. There we go. And what I like to do is just put a couple of leaves of coriander on the top before it's served. So there we are. That's Mexican enchiladas with cheese. This is a different type of gnocchi from Italy, not made with potatoes this time, but with semolina. You sprinkle the semolina into milk along with nutmeg and seasoning. Bring it up to the boil and simmer for 4 minutes, whisking all the time until it's so stiff you can stand the spoon up. Remove it from the heat and beat in eggs and Parmesan cheese. Then pour the mixture into a tin lined with silicone paper, cool and chill overnight to firm up. Next day, turn the mixture out, peel off the paper and cut into 2-inch rounds with a pastry cutter. Then overlap the rounds in a dish with ricotta cheese and gorgonzola sprinkled over, finally some Parmesan, then bake on a high shelf for 30 minutes until they're golden brown. Well, I'm not quite finished yet. I've got a couple more things to show you, but I'm also going to look forward to seeing you again next time. These little tarts combine the flavours of goat's cheese and sage, and underneath there's red onions slowly cooked in balsamic vinegar. Then bake in the oven till squidgy and melted. The title of this one says it all. Curd cheesecake with Greek yoghurt, honey and pistachios. This just happens to be our producer's favourite. Here I've got a cake, a mousse, puddings and a trifle, and they've all got one thing in common.
Well, sadly, this is the last in our series of programmes, but we're going to end on a high note because today the programme is all about chocolate. Now, chocolate is made from cocoa, pure cocoa which is grown and harvested from cocoa beans. And what you want to know when you buy a bar of chocolate is how much of that is in it. And there's a little thing on a little word on the label which says cocoa solids, and that's going to tell you how much chocolate you've got, because you wouldn't believe how much it varies. This one is one of the best around. This is 75% cocoa solids, and it's a dark continental chocolate with all the sophistication of full chocolate flavour. This one here has 70% cocoa solids, but this is something interesting too, because the cocoa beans are grown in the rainforest in West Africa, and it's actually organic. So if you want to buy organic chocolate, that's also a very good one. But somebody told me a little test recently of how to tell if you got a good bar of chocolate. There's no wrapper here and no label. So how do you tell? Well, apparently, if you just snap a little piece of chocolate, it's the difference in the sound. A good chocolate will have a good snap, and a poor chocolate won't. So we'll just try that now and see what happens. That's the first snap. And let's go down to the 34% now and have another snap. See? It is quite different, quite different. Also, you may like to know, if you're a chocoholic or you really love eating chocolate, that there's now one chocolate maker in France who makes chocolate from individual suppliers of cocoa beans from around the world. So you can get a special variety of cocoa bean chocolate. They come in a pack of 7 bars, so you can have some fun and do a chocolate tasting, find out, which one you like best. They have 75% cocoa solids, and this one here is called Semolina. And it's described as being full-bodied, without being aggressive, a rounded, warm taste with a hint of Asia. So I think it's just like a wine tasting. If you really like chocolate, you can experiment with that. Now we're going to make our first chocolate recipe in the programme, and I think it's important for everybody to know how to make a good old-fashioned chocolate mousse. And before we make the chocolate mousse, the first technique you have to learn when you're going to cook with chocolate is how to melt it successfully. So you start off with a saucepan with about 1 inch of water in it. And the water needs to be heated, but not to boiling point. It just needs to be barely off simmering point. So when we made poached eggs, you remember we looked at little bubbles on the base of the pan, and we said that's the right temperature. Well, that's the right temperature for chocolate. So you can see the little bubbles at the bottom of the pan there. Last time I told you how to boil water, this time I'm telling you how not to boil it and just have little bits of bubbles like that in the bottom. So that's on the lowest heat. Then you put your bowl on top of your mixing bowl on top of the water, and then in goes the chocolate. And we're making chocolate mousse for 6. So we've got 2 bars of 75% dark chocolate, and that's about 7 ounces altogether. And then to the chocolate, I'm going to add 4 fluid ounces of warm water, just hand hot water. And then just push the chocolate into the water. What will happen now is the water will dull the chocolate and make it look a bit unexciting. But you're not to worry about that. If you leave the heat low and the bowl on top and go away for about 6 minutes, when you come back, the chocolate will be melted. And what happens when people melt chocolate and it seizes up and becomes stiff, what goes wrong is people get impatient. They don't want to wait 6 minutes, so up goes the heat, the water boils, and it's too much heat. You've got to have a gentle heat to melt chocolate properly. Well, once the chocolate has completely melted and turned lovely and smooth, the next thing you need to do is take it off the heat, turn the heat out, and leave it to cool whilst you deal with the next ingredient, which is separated eggs. I've got 3 eggs here, 3 egg whites in this bowl and 3 egg yolks in another bowl, and I'm going to start by whisking the whites. So we'll start that off. And the egg whites need to come up to the soft peak stage. Right, the eggs have now reached the soft peak stage. The next ingredient is some sugar, but before I add the sugar, I'm just going to steady the bowl by putting a cloth underneath it because I need both hands free. Now I've got 1.5 ounces of caster sugar here, and I'm going to continue whisking, adding the sugar a little bit at a time. Those of you who are with me on part 1 will remember this is how we made meringue. And this is sort of like another version of a meringue, only with much less sugar. So that's the egg whites ready. And the next thing I'm going to do is just stir the yolks into the melted chocolate because it's now had a chance to just cool off a bit. So what I'll do is take the wooden spoon out and just slide the chocolate off it. And then get rid of that, add the 3 egg yolks. And they're just going to be folded in quite quickly, and then put 1 spoonful of the whipped whites to lighten the mixture. And then after that, carry on folding the egg whites in. So let's just have 1 tablespoon of egg whites first. Here we go. That's going to be folded, and what you need to do now is remember that what you've just done is got lots of air into the egg whites, and you don't want to lose the air. So what you're going to have to do is be very patient and just use folding movements with your spoon. Just don't go in there and try and mix it in quickly. So you cut across the mixture and then you lift and fold over. Now I'm going to just take a clean spoon and we'll have another spoonful of egg whites. In fact, we'll have a couple. And when I used to make chocolate mousse in the early days, I just used to whip up the egg whites without adding any sugar. And sometimes when I made a chocolate mousse, sometimes I'd have sort of liquid left at the bottom, which isn't very nice. But now I've cracked that. By adding a bit of sugar to the egg white, it sort of stabilises them and it helps you to keep it nice and moussey without it flopping. And because the chocolate is such a high cocoa content, it can take the sugar. So that's now ready to go into serving portions. It serves 6, and I'm going to put it into stemmed glasses. I quite like chocolate mousse in stemmed glasses, but if you don't want to put it in glasses, you can actually put it into little ramekin dishes. I've got one sitting there to show you, and it's a little bit more difficult to manoeuvre this into glasses, but I think at the end it does look sort of more elegant. And then when you fill 6 glasses, what you do is cover the surface with cling film and then chill them thoroughly in the refrigerator before serving. And I want you to see one now that's ready to serve because I want you to have a look at the texture. And there it is in all its glory, very luscious, very chocolatey mousse. And I always like to serve it with a bit of softly whipped cream on the top. One thing I think I need to mention is if you're making chocolate mousse, it does contain raw eggs, as you've seen, so it's not a good idea to give it to vulnerable groups. But before we finish chocolate mousse, I want you to see what the texture of the mousse is like. I think it's important that you just see inside. So I'm going to just show you that on a spoon. And that is beautiful, wonderful, very simple, but very lovely chocolate mousse.
This is definitely a chocolate cake for grown-ups. It's made with prunes soaked in armagnac. To make the cake, take the yolks of 6 separated eggs and add them to 5 ounces of golden caster sugar. Beat them until they begin to thicken. Then add 2 ounces of cocoa powder, which you sift into the mixture and then fold it in. Next in go the egg whites, beaten first till stiff, then use 1 spoonful to lighten the mixture before carefully gently folding in the rest, trying not to lose any air. Then divide the mixture between two 8-inch cake tins and bake on the centre shelf of the oven for 15 minutes. Prunes have to be soaked in Armagnac well in advance. First set a dozen aside, then put the rest in a processor with a heaped dessert spoon of creme fraiche and any of the soaking liquid. Then puree to make the cake filling. Next, dip the whole prunes in melted chocolate and use the remaining chocolate mixed with more creme fraiche to spread over the top of the cake before decorating with the prunes. I'm now going to show you a really stunning recipe that is so easy to make you just won't believe it. You start off with 8 ounces of dark, plain chocolate with 75% cocoa solids, and you melt it the same way as we melted it before, but without any water. You just melt the chocolate, and the reason it looks so lovely and glossy is because the chocolate, when it was melted, had 2 ounces of butter beaten into it. And I can give you a tip. If you want to melt chocolate and add any liqueurs or spirits, which we're going to do in a minute, we're going to add some rum. If you add them straight into the melted chocolate, it does sort of go grainy. So if you add butter first and get it all nice and glossy like this, then you won't have any problems. Now, the next ingredient that's going to join the melted chocolate and butter is this one here, which is double cream, and it's been sort of lightly whipped to the floppy stage. So I'm just going to add that. And just clean the bowl. And then I'm just going to stir the chocolate into the cream, combine the two thoroughly. Just needs a bit more mixing. It looks sort of marbly at the moment, and you just need to get all that sort of marble out of it so that it's a nice, evenly blended colour. And then the next ingredient is in my bowl here. It looks a bit peculiar, but what it is actually, it's 8 ounces of these, and these are oat biscuits that are very lightly sweetened. And what you do with them is you take the 8 ounces and just break them up into little pieces, and I would say these are roughly sort of 1/4 of an inch, 1/3 of an inch. It's not vital, but not too small because you're going to get some crunch in this. Now they're going to go in to the cream and the chocolate, and we're just going to give them a little mix to be thoroughly combined. And then the next ingredient I've got is the dried cherries that we used earlier in the series when we made the duck sauce. The dried sour cherries, I've got 2 ounces of those and 2 ounces of fat, juicy raisins, and these have been soaked overnight in 3 tablespoons of rum. So they're going to go in next. And then finally, I've got 4 ounces of pistachio nuts. You can buy these in packets ready shelled with no salt, especially for baking. And what I've done is I've just roughly chopped them. They, again, shouldn't be too small because we want lots of nice crunch. So we've got cherries, raisins, pistachio nuts and biscuits. And now I'm just going to give this another mixing. Now the name of this cake is unbaked chocolate cake. It's sometimes called refrigerator cake because the lovely thing about it is it doesn't need any baking. It's just going to go into the refrigerator. But first of all, it's going to go into a tin. And I've got here an 8-inch cake tin that has been lightly oiled. It's 1.5 inches deep, and now we're just going to put the mixture in. And then, what you do then is you just smooth it out and press it down very, very firmly. And when you've pressed it down and got it quite even on the top, then just sort of pat it like that to give it a sort of rough surface. It's quite nice if it has a rough surface. Then you cover that with cling film and you put it in the refrigerator and leave it for a minimum of 4 hours to set and become firm. And guess what? We have one that's been in the refrigerator over here, and this is what it looks like. And before you serve it, it's quite nice to just dust the surface with some cocoa. I've got organic cocoa here, which is a very nice colour. And I'm just going to dust the surface with that.
And then I think what you're going to want to do now is see inside it. So I'm just going to cut a piece out and let you have a look. It's quite crunchy and firm, the texture, but all those lovely, beautiful ingredients together give the most superb flavour and texture. And I would serve that with some chilled pouring cream. This is a chocolate version of everybody's favourite dessert, creme brulee. They have a caramel topping which hardens into a glassy caramel crust, covering the creamy chocolate cream. Well, whenever I do a new book or a television series, there's always a kind of internal vote as to which recipe is going to be the recipe of that particular series. And this one I'm going to show you now has got the vote this time, but it'll only prove right when it gets to you and you start making it. And then we'll see. Well, the recipe is called melting chocolate puddings, and they're little baked puddings in the oven that have got inside melted chocolate, and it's all very clever and very wonderful. Now we're going to melt some chocolate first, but slightly different from the way we did it before. I've got my hot water here ready and my bowl, and I've got 7 ounces of dark 75% chocolate, which is going to go into the bowl, and I've also got 7 ounces of butter that has been cut into little lumps to make it melt quicker. And then I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of brandy, which goes very, very well with chocolate. So 2 tablespoons of brandy. And then I'm just going to leave that, as we did before, it melts exactly the same way, just very, very slowly, and show you the next part of the recipe. Well, you need a nice, big, large, roomy mixing bowl to start off with. And what I'm going to put first in my mixing bowl is 4 whole large eggs. And then here I've got 4 egg yolks. So you're going to have 4 egg whites left over. So what you could do is make a lovely big pavlova meringue if you wanted to, as well as the chocolate puddings. And then here I've got 4 ounces of golden caster sugar, and that's going to go in with the eggs. And then we're going to have some vanilla extract, and it's 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now we're going to whisk the eggs and the sugar together for quite a long time. What happens is it's whisked and we get lots and lots of air in it, and it doubles in volume, and then I'll show you the next stage. So you need a good strong whisk, and it's going to take about 5 minutes to whisk it if you've got a strong whisk, or if you've got a less strong one it might take a bit longer, about 7 minutes. But anyway, off we go. What happens is it becomes very thick and mousse-like because of all the air that's been incorporated into it. And you know it's ready when you lift your whisk up and you can leave a trail of mixture on top of the rest of the mixture. When it leaves a visible trail, then you know that it's ready. It used to be called, when I first started cooking, you beat it up till the ribbon, and the ribbon meant this little trail that you get there. Right, so what we'll do now is introduce the chocolate to that, and the chocolate is now ready, so we'll turn the heat out. And the first thing I need to do is just stir it till it's smooth and the butter is completely dissolved into it. Now what we need to do is introduce the chocolate mixture to the other mixture, but quite carefully because we've beaten all the air in. So what we want to do is just pour it around the edges, so we don't knock too much air out of it. And what I'm going to do now is, it's quite hot, the bowl, so what I'm going to do is get my cloth here and finish off using the spatula just to get the rest of the chocolate in. That's it. Now, the next part of the recipe is flour. We've got 2.5 ounces of flour here, and what we're going to do is sift the flour into the mixture. You can see how light this is going to be because there's only 2.5 ounces of flour. So we've got all eggs and chocolate and just a little bit of flour. So you can already imagine just how wonderfully light this pudding is going to be. Sift the flour, then take a large spoon and do the folding movements exactly the same as we did with the chocolate mousse, because careful folding means we're going to preserve all that lovely air, which is going to be what makes the puddings eat beautifully light. And you need to take a bit of time over this, because if you don't fold it properly, you get little sort of blocks of white, and we want it to be very even. Now, that's all ready now to be cooked, but the very good news about this recipe is that you can make it in advance. It actually serves 8 people, and you need 8 of these little aluminium cooking pots. They're about 6 fluid ounce capacity, and they need to be really very, very well buttered. And then you just fill them up, and what you can do then, if you like, is just put them into the refrigerator, cover them with cling film, and then just whip them out when you're ready to serve them, because they don't take long to cook. In fact, if you were cooking them straight away now, they would only take about 10 to 12 minutes. But if you're keeping them in the refrigerator for 3 hours, then they're probably going to take about 14 minutes, but that's very little cooking time. And the oven temperature is gas mark 6 or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't fill them right up to the top, just leave a little bit of a gap, because they are going to rise up a bit. And here's our exquisite little chocolate pudding. Loosen it with a palette knife. It comes away quite easily from the dish if you've got it well buttered. And then what I want to show you is what happens inside the pudding. There's beautiful, lovely, flowing, melted chocolate. And what I would do with that is I would serve it with some very well chilled, it's nice and hot, the pudding, some well chilled pouring cream. But I'm not finished yet, because as beautiful and as light and as luscious as that is, it's also actually, we've discovered, very nice cold. So I've got a cold one here, and you could equally serve it cold. I just want to show you the texture inside. It's still quite squidgy and soft inside, and then in that case I would serve it with a nice little dollop of whipped cream. And just before we finish with chocolate puddings, I have to say a big thank you to my friends in Morstan Hall in Norfolk who gave me the recipe. Thank you.
Last time you made apple muffin cake, but these are chocolate mini muffins, and they're topped with melted chocolate and toasted hazelnuts. These are chocolate brownies, but rather special ones, because they're made with soaked prunes and chopped almonds. Nice to eat just as they are, or served warm with ice cream or whipped cream. Don't forget though, that though you think brownies look uncooked, they are cooked. They're meant to be really squidgy and moist like this.
Well, as usual, I've almost run out of time, but that's okay today, because I'm going to show you a chocolate recipe that's specially designed for people who have no time. It's called Cheats Chocolate Trifle, and the cheating is because more or less everything that goes in it is just bought from the shop. First of all, you have double chocolate muffins, which are available in all supermarkets. You make them into little sandwiches, slice them, make them into sandwiches with this, which is Morello cherry jam, a nice sharp jam. Then you place them in a trifle bowl, and the next ingredient is a jar of these. These are Morello cherries, which again are quite sharp, and you soak them for overnight in 3 fluid ounces of rum. Then, next day, what you do is you put the rum that the cherries were soaked in over the trifle sponges and let them soak it up, and then in go the cherries on top. Then what I've got here are the contents of these 2 tubs.
one of fresh custard sauce and the other of mascarpone, full-fat cream cheese, and they've just been mixed together with 1.5 bars of melted chocolate. So that goes in next, on top of the cherries. And then what we're going to do there is just spread that out, and then all we're going to do next is top it with 1/2 pint of whipping cream, and the whipping cream has been whipped to the sort of soft floppy stage, so that goes in on top of the chocolate mixture. And that's spread out all around. And then finally, 1.5 bars of chocolate were melted into the mascarpone mixture, and the half that was left over has been shredded with a knife into little shreds. And that's going to go on the top. And then that's going to be covered with cling film, go into the refrigerator and really chill well. And I think that is the fastest trifle in the whole world. Now, you saw how easy that was. We've been cooking away for quite a long time now, and I can tell you it hasn't always been this easy. Well, there are 2 magic words that are always going to be on the label if you've got real free-range chicken, and I can't remember what they are. And here we have our beautiful piece of golden fried skate. All that needs now on the side is some of our lovely homemade tomato. And here's our beautiful piece of golden fried skate. All that needs now on the side is some of our excellent, very quick homemade tomato. I can't do it! Oh, sod! What will happen is it might not work with the butter. Sorry. It's just had exactly 8 minutes. I'm going to remove it to a plate. Does it look all right? Have we got some old haddock that we can boil up quickly and get some coloured milk? How's that? Still too high? What a beautiful green salad. What a beautiful green... There's a blue bottle clawing over the cheese. So what do we do now?
Sticky moments. There won't be any.
She said!